Thank you very much. I would like to talk about the Prom that we are developing at the moment. I've got a travel grant by Astellas. We all know that overactive bladder is complex. It's multifactorial, heterogeneous, and it's not only about the bladder. There's increasing evidence that it's more to do than only the bladder. We know that there is overlap between overactive bladder and irritable bowel syndrome. But also psychological aspects are very important in the bladder. And it affects sexuality, but it's also changeable within a day, or with what are you doing, or who are you with, what are you drinking. And to diagnose overactive bladder, we rely now on retrospective questionnaires, which might be prone to bias. So what we would like to do is to develop a Prom which could capture all this complexity of the overactive bladder, maybe without so much bias. So what we did do, we used the expert sampling method. And therefore we developed Euromate, which is an app on the telephone, and which repeatedly, randomly, during the day, measures the symptoms in real time in the context of everyday life. I'll come back to that later. So how did we develop this? We made an initial list of questions, and therefore we used questions from validated questionnaires. In addition to that, we also wanted to add psychological symptoms and contextual symptoms and social factors. So therefore, now we know what we as professionals think is important, but we wanted to verify that with the patients. So according to FDA guidelines, how to evaluate a Prom, we did a focus group study, and we did 2 meetings, and the meetings consisted of 2 parts. The first part was an open discussion part, where the patients could say what they thought was important, and the second part was to see if the questions that we came up with could capture what they thought. So the questionnaire was changed now. And then we did several multidisciplinary expert meetings where the experts talked together and decided which questions to got into this app. And we decided on to have a morning questionnaire about the sleep and about sexuality, and later during the day all the same questions. So it measured, as said before, the symptoms in real time in the context of daily life. I'll just give an example of how it looks like. In random moments during the day, at 10 times, patients get a beep, and when they get the beep, they have to answer the questions. So for example, at beep 6, at day 3, they ask about bladder complaints, about nutrition, but also other somatic complaints, for example, muscle complaints, bowel complaints. We ask about the mental state and about the situation. And the questions are the same every time during the day. So in conclusion, we think that Euromate may meet the need for a new assessment method that would capture the complexity of overactive bladder. And therefore we would like to see if what influence the changes, how does the complaints develop. And at the moment we are doing a validation study. Thank you very much.
I have a question. Anyone want to ask a question? Okay, I have one. Get the ball rolling here. So I just came from the roundtable discussion in this room prior to this session, and there was a lot of very, very interesting discussion about patient adherence to medical regimens and advice given by physicians. Do you think the Euromate could also be used for such an application?
Yes, I think so. At first we want to use it as a diagnosticum to see how it is, but I think that in the future, when the validation study is correct, we could use it for tailor-made treatment for the patient. If we know that the complaints always happen after, I don't know, just drinking that or being in those circumstances, then you could adjust to that and maybe also adjust medication or try to monitor that as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jerry Blavis from New York. I applaud this effort. I think it's so important to be able to get such a granular look at patients with overactive bladder. And my question isn't so much about your study, but maybe you can help me. If you're taking questions from from all other validated questionnaires psychometrically, is it really necessary to do focus groups again and go through the whole process again for the questions? I understand if you have new questions, if something new emerges, but if nothing new if you decided to use all existing questions, would you need to go ahead and then do the focus groups again and do that part of the psychometric evaluation again?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much for your question. It's a good question. Yes, you have to do it again because we didn't use the whole questionnaires, and we only used questions from that questionnaires, and we had to rewrite them because the questionnaires are always retrospective, and we had to know, how are you feeling now? What are you doing now? So you had to rewrite the questions, and therefore you have to do the whole process again in order to get it validated.
Kari Tikkinen, Helsinki, Finland. Yeah, I agree. It's super important to do it again, the focus group, and it's a good job that you did it, and especially because you have to choose quite a lot, right? You had like dozen almost of different questionnaires, where if you have like a 10, they probably had about 100 questions, and then you actually chose. And I was about to ask, what did you choose, and how many did you choose, and how much does it take time for a patient? Yeah. Like, and the second part of the question is that these have a bladder training effect, right? When you do this kind of stuff, and and that's fine. I mean, it's a good placebo, but what happens then after people doesn't use it anymore?
Yes, thank you for the question. We had the same problem. There are lots of questions and you want to know everything, but you have to choose between the patient's, adherence. I mean, if they have to answer hundreds of questions, they won't use it, they won't do it, and after the first day they throw it away, and then there goes your result. So it has been used in psychiatry patients and also in irritable bowel patients. And there it was very feasible, and we chose in the end 30 questions. And there are few questions which come only once. For example, the sexuality question. It's no use to ask about sexuality 10 times a day for most people. But it took us a lot of discussion because we had, I think, 2 or 3 multidisciplinary meetings in order to discuss, and you have to make choices.
I think we should move on to the next speaker.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very much.